Hey, this is Rex, and you're watching the Brick Ninjas. And today, we're going to talk about Metallica. Recently, Metallica announced they will release a new album on November 18th, 2016, titled Hardwired to Self-Destruct. They were also gracious enough to release the title track to feed fans' 8-year fix since the last Metallica album. Now, as a longtime fan, my first reaction is to listen to this new song and compare it to the Metallica brand I grew up with in the 80s and early 90s. Ever since the release of Load in 1996, I've always been apprehensive whenever Metallica releases a new album. I'll never forget, in 1996, I was just really anticipating Load coming out. It'd been like 5 years since the Black Album, and I was like, great, finally, some new Metallica music. I'm so tired of this grunge shit in the 90s and this alternative doom and gloom. I wanted something, Metallica's always had a little more pep and energy to their music. Even though it's angry, it's like a positive kind of angry in a way. Anyways, I'll never forget in 1996 going to pick up Load on June 4th and just driving around for a couple hours being completely confused by the music on that album. And since the middle of the first track, I was listening to it and I was like, God, this whole thing can't be this bland and passé. But it basically was. It just didn't sound like anything I'd heard from the previous 5 albums. Now, don't get me wrong, I've grown to appreciate that album and the ones that followed. But that album signaled a direction for Metallica that left me as a fan feeling left behind and hung out to dry. I just wasn't happy. Metallica's first 4 albums can be defined as cohesive combinations of raw energy, melody, counterpoint, syncopation, complex rhythmic cadences, and highly structured musical motifs, all punctuated with intellectual lyrics that dealt with deep subject matter rooted in history, literature, philosophy, and social issues. These albums sound like 4 guys focused on creating music that defies common conventions while still being successful. Now, the 5th album, commonly known as the Black Album, is a professional treatment and polishing of their previous work, and was proof that Metallica could no longer be ignored by the mainstream. Like the albums that came before it, it left an indelible mark on the world. Now, many fans argue that the Black Album was a departure from the 80s thrash, but there are elements of thrash on that record. Holier Than Thou, Through the Never, and The Struggle Within, to name a few. But getting back to my point, the music on the first 5 albums represents a group of people with on-borrowed vision driven to create genuine art. The next 4 albums, Load, Reload, Saint Anger, and Death Magnetic, venture far from the established canon Metallica branded in the early 80s. Load and Reload completely break form from the previous 5 albums and feel like explorations rather than crusades. The feeling I get from those albums is that Metallica had an identity crisis and was trying to tap some wellspring of inspiration by exploring the foundations of popular folk music. The thrash and heavy elements of the past were gone and replaced with elements of blues, country, and hard rock. The Metallica that once was a trendsetter was all of a sudden trying to fit in rather than stand out. Something else that set these albums apart from the first 5 is that they all sound lonely, like 4 people disconnected from each other trying to find themselves and fit in. And lonely is a stark contrast from what Metallica once represented, a cohesive group of visionaries getting it done on their own terms. A lot of this can be gleaned from 1.5 years in the life of Metallica Part 2 and the even more revealing Some Kind of Monster. Metallica went from focused and driven to aimless and uncertain. The Metallica brand in the 80s was smart, sleek, bold, and sharp, and it transformed in the 90s to simple, rough, dirty, and dull. The release of the new single, Hardwired, has given me the impression that Metallica appear to be revisiting their thrash era. The song starts with James' familiar use of E-flat pedal tones, a catchy melodic chord progression similar to Disposable Heroes, and the song structure is very reminiscent of Kill 'Em All, shorter, simpler, and smart. Lars starts with a snare roll in sync with James' pedal tone cadence and continues to show off in the rest of the song like he did in their early era. Later, Kirk shreds a solo that reminds me of Kill 'Em All, but it didn't feel complete. The ending of the solo didn't quite resolve all the anticipation that he spent creating in the earlier parts, and it really could have gone on for a few more bars, but I'm still happy to see Kirk return to form. Rob's presence is audible on this record with space cleared out in the EQ spectrum just for bass, and I would venture to say Metallica has returned from a long hiatus of self-searching and finally come to terms with the fact that it's okay to thrash and live on the mountain that you built. The little bit I've heard from this album is tantamount to their freshman work, which many would say was their golden era of creativity and purpose. I'm excited to hear more from this record and see Metallica on the tour again. Listening to the new single Hardwired was like finding a long-lost friend from the past that restores your faith that things were once right and good. Even Jason says he likes this new record. What do you think? Were the first 5 albums better than the rest? Or do you like the last 4? Or do you like everything that Metallica does, and you'd even buy a Metallica album full of beer farts and late-night vomiting sessions? What do you think of Hardwired? Does it match up to the brand Metallica originally established? Or is Metallica just selling out again like everybody likes to say? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.